morning and thanks for joining us. I'm Mitchell Ringos. On Saturday, members of the Sioux Lookout OPP and Lac Sioux Police Service responded to a call for an unresponsive individual at a residence on 2nd Street in the community of Hudson. When crews arrived, they found 3 individuals that were unresponsive and pronounced deceased at the scene. Postmortems will be conducted at the Ontario Forensic Pathology Service in Toronto later this week to help determine the cause of death while the investigation continues. The ongoing Thunder Bay City Council will hold their final meeting tomorrow night at City Hall. And besides the presentation of Community Safety Awards, the only real item on the agenda is giving the departing councillors a proper farewell. It will be the last meeting for longtime councillors Brian McKinnon, Rebecca Johnson, and Aldo Roberto, along with Cody Fraser and Peng Yu. The city already had a formal send-off for Bill Morrow, who resigned as mayor on October 3rd, just before the election. The retiring council members are expected to offer some parting words and be presented with gifts from City Hall. The new city council takes over on Tuesday, but won't have their official swearing-in ceremony until November 28th. For the first time in its 114-year history, the township of Nipigon has elected a woman to the mayor's office. First-time municipal candidate Suzanne Kuko beat out 16-year council veteran James Folds last month with over 60% of the vote.
I actually managed my daughter's hockey team, and it was kind of neat. I went into the dressing room with them to give out their jerseys, and they kind of gave me a big cheer, a hip hip hooray. And you know, those girls are 13, 14 years old, so it's nice to be a role model in my community for those girls, for sure.
As Nipigon's first female mayor, Kuko hopes her win will show young women and girls that females can succeed in politics. Kuko campaigned on bringing a fresh perspective to the mayor's seat and says funding to develop a new strategic plan is already on the agenda for her first council meeting.
There was a public survey that was sent out last winter, and one of the main priorities for the community members who completed that survey was growth and development. So that's going to be a major priority. Housing, of course. Seniors housing in particular, to take some of that pressure off the long-term care waiting list.
As the former economic development officer, Kuko isn't new to town hall, but she does expect a learning curve as she shifts from attending council meetings to chairing them. Just down the highway in Schreiber, Kevin Mullins was appointed mayor in 2021 following the tragic death of Mayor Dave Hamilton. Now the people of Schreiber have also thrown their support behind him, with a majority of voters marking their ballots for the incumbent candidate.
I can't thank the town enough for having the faith in me, and it went a little better than I thought it would. I always suspected I was going to get in, but I didn't realize by such a margin.
Mullins secured the township's top job with a healthy lead, winning with more than twice the voters of runner-up Dominic Camiso. He's carrying on where he left off, gearing up to fight for Schreiber's EMS station and lobbying the provincial and federal governments for support for housing development. He's also working to get local employers involved.
The mill, the CP, they're going to have to get on board. The education sector, the health sector. Like I said previously, they all need employees coming in, and right now Terrace Bay or Schreiber or surrounding area, actually, we've got no housing.
Over the next 4 years, Mullins wants to see development on the more than 20 empty and service lots owned by the township and to address the issue of seniors housing. Meanwhile, Terrace Bay has elected a new mayor. Councillor Paul Malashewski defeated former councillor and 2-time mayoral candidate Gino LeBlanc with 65% of the vote.
I won by almost 200 votes, so yeah, it felt great, and I was happy to see that the residents of Terrace Bay gave me a vote of confidence for the next 4 years.
Malashewski says there's a good mix of skill and experience on the new council, and he thinks there's a lot of agreement about the needs for the community. He has a few priorities, and he wants to start working on all of them in the first year of his term.
Helping the seniors, whether it be senior housing or assisting them in their homes. There is a need for housing in Terrace Bay, like, you know, all over Canada, really. Hopefully we can get some new houses built. We have probably about 15 lots right now for sale. We sold a few of them. The other issue we have right now is the EMS service.
Malashewski's to-do list doesn't end there. He also wants to work on infrastructure, community beautification, and creating youth programs. With all that on his plate, he says he may need to cut back on his volunteering. The 1907 Kenora Thistles will forever hold the title as the smallest city to ever win the Stanley Cup. The complete story of the hockey team's unlikely championship is now being told in a new book published by Rat Portage Press. Jonathan Wilson has the story.
The story of the Kenora Thistles has been legendary in hockey circles for over a century. Hockey historian and author Eric Zweig was just a boy given this miniature Stanley Cup when he first noticed the Thistles name engraved on it, and he's been enamored with the team ever since.
Well, I guess I've always been fascinated with the idea that a tiny town of, people used to always say 4,000, but I think it was closer to 6,000. That's what I say in the book. Could win the Stanley Cup at any time. And yet this tiny team from a tiny town could still beat them and win the Stanley Cup. And I've always been intrigued with that.
Kenora publisher Rick Brignall, who owns the Rat Portage Press, contacted Zweig a few years ago to write the definitive book on the team. Engraved in History was published earlier this year.
And he had always told me over the years that someday he wanted to put together the sort of definitive history of the team, an adult book for adults, and he wanted me to write it. And he came to me, I guess 2 years ago, kind of mid-pandemic, and said we were going to do this, and he wanted me to do it. And I had to, I'm sorry to say that I actually had to think about it for a minute. And then, of course, I jumped on it because I thought if this book comes out and it's by somebody other than me, I'll be really disappointed in myself. So I said yes, and I'm glad I did, and it was a lot of fun to put it all together.
Zweig's research included interviewing grandchildren of the Thistles players and scouring old newspaper articles from the early 1900s, which he says were very descriptive and helpful.
The newspapers used to arrange for telegraph reports to be sent to the visiting team's city. So this was, pretty much play-by-play that's remarkably similar to what we'd hear on radio and TV today. And the newspapers would transcribe it word for word.
One endearing aspect of the Thistles is that they were mainly a homegrown Kenora team. Billy McGimsey, Tommy Hooper, Roxy Boudreau, and Tom Phillips were either born or grew up in what was then known as Rat Portage. Cy Griffiths moved there 6 years before the Cup victory, and all but Boudreau are now in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
And for whatever reason, 4 of these guys in Kenora and others too, but the 4 core guys who would later be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, something came together in Kenora where these guys got good enough as a team of local, homegrown, just boys who grew up into men. And they were still pretty young when they won the Cup. They're all in their early 20s. But something about this group, they just all came together.
The 1907 Thistles victory is noted on the inside rim of the Stanley Cup. The book Engraved in History is now available on Amazon or direct from Rat Portage Press. Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
An innovative art show and sale was held at the Valhalla Hotel this weekend as a way to celebrate past and present artists. Jessica Clement has the details.
Thunder Bay residents flocked to the Valhalla Ballroom this weekend to see the selection of artwork, photographs, jewelry, and one-of-a-kind items made by local artists. Along with showing the current talent of artists in the city, the art show also focused on remembering those artists who have passed away. The 2-day event featured an exhibit which showcased some of the artwork and names of local artists, musicians, and poets who passed. Organizer Billiana Baker says she found out a lot of artists were passing away without people knowing who they were, so she wanted to put out the display to honor them.
This is such a large cultural and art community, and I just hated to see that we don't have a reference to what was happening in the past. And I also believe in the work that the artists are doing now and new cultures and new life that's being put into this fantastic city for arts and cultures.
Baker says she's amazed by the amount of talent and creativity people have in the community, and that she's glad to host an event where people get to showcase those talents. She says one of her favorite parts about organizing these types of events is seeing the faces of people when they walk in.
Because when you have people come in and they go, wow, I didn't know this was here, even though we have been around for a while. And so many positive comments about, wow, I haven't seen this before, and wow, what caliber of talent. So it's been such a positive experience.
Mike Jacks, owner of MJ Metalworks, was one of the artists showcasing his creations this weekend. He's been doing metal work for 5 years and started doing art shows around the city 3 years ago. He says he enjoys being able to meet new artists and residents around Thunder Bay, and adds that you can really feel the passion coming from the artists when they talk about their creations.
It's truly amazing. It's hard to even find the words to really put it into. There's so many wonderful crafters in Thunder Bay, and until you come out and really see for yourself one of these shows, you really get the depth of how creative people are in Thunder Bay and how determined they are at their craft. Everyone has something different to offer. It's truly amazing.
Jessica Clement, TBT News.